Every season, players find out about hidden mechanics in dungeons that the Adventurer Guide simply never mentions. Other players discover tech that nullifies entire mechanics and makes certain bosses a cakewalk. Midnight's second season is still very young, but so many mechanics have already been discovered but are rather unknown for the average player. In this video, I will be showing you hidden tech that kind of feel like you're cheating, but are completely fine to do if you want to gain a little bit of an advantage. The things I'm going to mention in this video are obviously not going to save you 10 minutes in each dungeon, but will most certainly make your life a whole lot easier while even making some pulls and bosses more enjoyable. Before we begin, I want to mention that all of the footage you're seeing here was streamed on twitch.tv/Varian. And if you want to see me try and become the highest ranked enhancement shaman this season, check out my Twitch after this video. I stream almost every day, so if you're lucky, you might even catch me live. Alright, without further ado, let's jump straight into the first dungeon. Let me ask you a question. How do you gain an advantage in a fair street fight? Exactly, a gun. And luckily, there is a conveniently placed vendor in Murder Row that will provide you with said gun. In Murder Row, there is this one room at the right of the dungeon entrance that you have to clear in order to get the hint from one of the 4 snitches that are spread across the entire first area of the dungeon. Once you've cleared that room, keep your eyes open for a faceted crystalline fell. There's always one of these stones in this room. Once you find it, pick it up and keep it until you've opened up the way to the first boss. There's 4 vendors in this dungeon that will sell you different bonuses like a mini bloodlust or increasing your health for a few seconds, but we don't care about any of those buffs. On the right side of the boss's arena, you will see this vendor. Go to him and buy the concealed gun. Quick note, this only works if the boss has not been pulled yet. If she has been pulled yet, the guards will push you back and you will no longer be able to buy the gun. This gun is a quick aimed cast that can be used on the first boss, inflicting them with a dot damage for 16 seconds and increasing their damage taken by 20%. If you use this on the boss after killing Nibbles and she gets stunned, you can one-face the entire boss if you save your bloodlust for the fight and your team has high enough damage. But even if you don't have all of that, you will deal a ton of damage to her, guaranteeing a very fast and free first boss. Moving on to King's Rest. The minions of Zoo are the first enemies you'll encounter when you phase into this dungeon, and I've seen a lot of people struggling with these. For one, you can purge them all, so if you have a priest with a master spell or shamans with purge, you can make quick work of them. If you don't, or if it's just too many, like at the beginning of the dungeon, you can use AoE roots and CCs like Earth Grab Totem or Vortex from druids. Just run ahead and place the totem or vortex down, and if your team is fast enough to catch up with you, just squeeze yourself through the side, or if your team isn't there yet, simply wait for the cast to be over and you'll have a free passage. Same thing goes here before the first boss. Simply drop the totem while you're fighting the first mobs that spawn, and by the time you've killed them all the minions of Zul will already be gone. And at the mini boss right before the last boss, if you get targeted by the big AoE circle, you will also spawn one minion that will fixate on you. Simply tuck yourself into one of these corners, place down your totem beneath your feet, and run back to the mini boss, and you won't have to worry about that guy at all. Another quick tip for King's Rest before the second boss. These big golems entomb players every few seconds. Something that is helpful to know about is that they will always entomb the player into the closest tomb to the mini boss. So if you're a tank, make sure to tank them at one of the tombs so your team doesn't have to waste time running back to one of them to save the entombed player. But even though the actual boss does the same thing, he doesn't actually put you to the closest tomb. So here your team will unfortunately have to run after the player if they are unlucky. Den of Nelarak is one of the new dungeons added to Midnight and is now also in the Mythic Plus rotation. As of now, it seems to be one of the easier ones with one of the most lenient timers. A way to save a bit more time though and make sure the Wind Gauntlet is a bit more easy are these Snow One provisions that are around the gauntlet area. If you are a Night Elf, a Troll or a Druid in bear form, you can pick this up and give yourself and your entire team a buff that will reduce movement forces by 50% for 15 minutes. So more than enough time to get past this phase. This buff is especially useful for less mobile classes and specs like pre-styled magic. Blinding Veil is next on the list. These roots on the second boss can get overwhelming real quick, but fortunately there's also a way to make this fight easier. If you are a paladin or a death knight, you can help your team and yourself by opening up some space during the fight. As a paladin, simply free them yourself and start running over as many roots as possible during that buff window. As a death knight, you have a few more options, as you can do the same thing with Death's Advance or with anti-magic shield. Simply apply the shield to yourself and run over the roots. If you have both of these classes in your team, you can probably get rid of most of these roots, but that's not all for this fight. You know how the boss periodically applies a root for everybody in the group? Well, the best way to deal with these roots is to obviously stack up in melee range and cleave them down together with the boss. But you can also remove these roots with certain abilities like Tiger's Lust on Monk or Spirit Walk on Shaman. This I would only recommend to do on the second application of the root though. The first application at the beginning of the fight is really easy to deal with, as you'll have all your CDs up, there's no other ability overlapping with it, and there's no roots on the floor that take away your your space yet. The second application on the other hand has overlapping abilities. There will already be roots on the floor and you won't have your big CDs up yet, which makes removing these roots with the before mentioned abilities the smartest play. Before we leave this place, let's talk about the third boss real quick. Is it only me or does anyone else struggle to see these bright tornadoes and their range indicator? I feel like they are too bright to see what's going on, especially if you play in the middle of the night and all 5 players send a multitude of these things out. A quick way to make this mechanic visually more clear is to use the inky black potion, which will turn everything around you dark, making these abilities way more clear and less blinding. Now that I think about it, maybe this ability is the reason why they called the dungeon the way they did. Anyway, you can buy these potions either during the Darkmoon Fair from Rona Greenteeth, who's around this area, or just buy them off the auction house for a couple gold, which is what I always do. Let's move on to Nexus Point Zenith 2, Voidska Arena. There's not much to talk about in this dungeon besides the first boss. I've seen a lot of players spread out since most of the meta specs this season seem to be ranged, but the best way to deal with this boss, especially in hierarchies, is to stack in melee range and try to get these rifts to stack up as closely to each other as possible without hitting someone with multiple lines, so you save room and therefore makes the second mechanic where balls shoot out of these rifts easier to deal with. This does make the fight a bit more melee unfriendly than it already is, but I'd rather lose some damage than get bombarded by 50 balls coming from all directions. Another quick tip for all of you Prot Warrior mains out there, you can reflect a big AoE knockback called Void Blast. This ability deals a ton of damage, and if you reflect it, you can stack up a nice amount of damage in the damage meters. Keep in mind though, that this might get changed at any moment, as Blizzard usually doesn't really like when boss abilities can get reflected in this way, but we'll see if they do something about it this time. Ruby Life Pools is ironically one of, if not the easiest dungeon this season, at least for now, but there's still some tech that is really nice to know, especially if you didn't play Mythic Plus back in Dragonflight when this dungeon came out and was a real pain in the ass. The biggest mistake I've seen people do is playing the second boss wrong. She will occasionally cast this Molten Boulder ability that will throw a rock into the direction of the targeted player. It will roll until it hits an obstacle and leaves behind fire on the ground. You can actually bait this ability out to go wherever you want to, ideally to a location that is already littered with lava. If you're using the boss ability timeline, simply watch out for this ability and make sure you and your team are positioning correctly so that whoever gets targeted is able to throw the boulder somewhere where it doesn't take away a lot of space. Another tank tip for this boss is that if you're playing a Night Elf, you can actually Shadow Melt the Tank Buster Searing Blow, saving yourself some health and preventing the stacks from building up, making the boss even easier than it already is. Another great tip on the last boss is that you can optimize your damage uptime if your tank knows how to tank this boss correctly. If you tank the boss in between these pillars, the dragon will always land right next to you. This way, you can keep up your cleave damage and improve your overall damage on both bosses by an insane amount, making the fight faster and way easier to deal with, as you won't have to deal with random fire breaths from different locations from Kiraka, as she will always land right here at the entrance, which is pretty cool. The last tip I got for this dungeon is that you can purge these primal thunderclouds that are spread across the entire last section of the dungeon. If you purge them, they lose their shield and die instantly, but before they do that, they fly to a random target within 60 yards and explode, dealing a good amount of damage. The biggest mistakes I've seen people do is that they purge too many at once, which at high keys might result in killing someone that doesn't expect it, so always take it slow and purge them one by one, similar to the mobs in Mysara caverns that you had to purge if you played last season. Moving on to the last dungeon in this list, and the only tip I currently have for Temple of Sethril is at the second boss Merektha. The boss will spawn a knot of snakes around 2 players, which will stun them and prevent them from getting out, even with things like Tiger's Dust. Most people I've seen tried killing these, but you can actually get the players out in a different way, which is by stunning or CCing them in any way that interrupts their cast. This will free the player and set free all the snakes, saving a good amount of time and increasing uptime on the boss. And if you're wondering what I have for Altar of Fangs, well, the only tip I can give you to make your life a whole lot easier in this dungeon is to put both of your hands together and start praying, because this dungeon in its current iteration is an absolute nightmare to play. And that's about every hidden or unknown mechanic that is out there for now. If the list ever grows and more tech gets discovered over the season, I will obviously keep you guys updated with another video like this. I would really like to know how many of these things you already knew and how many are new to you. Let me know down in the comments below, and while you're down there, consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. And if you want to catch me live, drop a follow on twitch.tv/Varian. Anyways, I wish you all a great rest of the day, and I will see you in the next one.